Alright, we have two things to talk about today, and they are arc length and sector area. So the arc length is part of a circumference. So when you look at a circle, we want just part of the circumference. Don't get this mixed up with arc measure. Arc measure is a degree amount. So let me just give you a quick picture real quick. So if I had a central angle and it was 70 degrees, and you said also the measure of the arc was 70 degrees, that's when you're talking about measure. We're not talking about that today. We are talking about our arc length. How long is that section? So we're talking about inches or feet or yards. To use that, we're going to need to use our circumference formula. So this proportion down here that we're going to be using, you are not going to be given that. You need to memorize it. But you are given the 2 pi r from your circumference on your formula sheet. Same thing if you looked over at sector area. A sector is a section of the circle, so you want the area of just a fraction of it. So for both of these, we are going to use a proportion to solve them, and that's because we're going to put in right here this theta. That theta is how many degrees of the circle we want. So we're basically figuring out what portion of the circle I want to figure out. And then we're going to compare it to either the area for sector area or the circumference for arc length and get just what fraction of that circle is that going to be made up of. Let me give you an example of this. So right here we have, I know it's arc length, and the way I know it's arc length is because it's bolded this outside area right here. Otherwise, read your directions carefully. Sometimes you'll just say in the directions what they want. So what I want is 105 degrees out of 360 degrees, and I want that to be equal to how much of the circumference? So 2 pi r. So 2 times pi times 16. Now we want to round this to the tenths. That means we're allowed to use 3.14 for pi. Your calculator has a pi button as well. I prefer you just to use 3.14. That's what the SOL is going to use. And that's just going to mean we're all getting the same answer at the same time. So what we need to do is just cross multiply and divide. So I need to go ahead and solve for this little section right here. So 2 pi times 16. We're going to go to our calculator real quick. And we've got 2 times 3.14 times 16. And that's going to give us out 100.48. So I'm going to replace this with 100.48. And now I can cross multiply it right there. So 105 times my 100.48 is going to give me about 10,500. So I've got 10,550.4, I believe. Let me take a quick look at that one more time. And then we need to cross right here, 360x. So all we need to do is get rid of that 360, and we are all done, and we have solved for just that portion of the circumference we wanted. So take that, divide it by 360, and there you go. We're about at 29.3. Now let's talk about another thing we want to talk about right here, because I wanted just the section of the circumference, so 29.3. Make sure you're in inches, and it should just be inches because circumference is inches. Not like area, which is squared. So your units will be just regular units for circumference. For sector area, that's going to be inches squared, or in this case, it's going to be yards squared. So let's go and try that one. So I know two reasons why they wanted the sector area. They shaded it, but also you see this bold line, how it's bold all the way around. So either look for that, or usually they're pretty nice about saying it right away. So I want 60 degrees out of 360 degrees of the area, which is pi r squared, so pi times 11 squared. And I'm going to go ahead and put my x right here because I want to know how much is 60 degrees out of the entire area. Now before we get started, and we could have done it over here, but 60 over 360, that is 1/6 of the circle. So that can save you a lot of work later on if you just go ahead and reduce those fractions. So over here I have 121 times pi. Let's go find that out. So 121 times 3.14. That's 379.94. Now I need to cross multiply and divide. Now the reason I like doing that simplification first is now I don't actually have to multiply this cross because 1 times anything doesn't change it. So all I really need to do is this cross and divide. So I just get to take my 379.94 and divide it by my 6. So I have about 63.3 yards squared. Did you remember your unit there like we were talking? So circumference can be normal units, but your area needs to be squared. So we just found that this section right here was 63.3 yards squared. So something new coming up is right in terms of pi. You could also call this the exact measure. So that means we're not going to round at all. That means we can't even round pi. We're going to just work around pi. So here's what I've got. I've got 90 degrees out of 360 degrees. That is 1/4. And that is equal to, I'm going to ignore that one now. That is equal to, I can tell arc length because it's bold right here. So I want to use my circumference formula. 2 times pi times 14, my radius. And I want to know how much of that is it. So go ahead and multiply what you can. We're just going to work around pi. We're going to always tack it onto the end like a variable. So 2 times 14 is 28. And then we've got pi right there. And we need to cross multiply this with 1. So 1 times 28 pi is just 28 pi. Moving way over here now. I'm going to get that a little bit further up for you. Alright, so now that I got 28 pi, let's see what it's equal to. 4 times x. So I just need to divide by my 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7, so I have 7 pi's worth. So we just treat it like it's a variable sitting at the end and just leave him right where he is. So let's go up and look back at this. This is 7 pi, and then don't forget your unit, meter. So 7 pi meters. So that is our exact measure, no rounding. Alright, next one, again, I know I want sector because it's shaded, but also look how bold it is all the way around. So I have 175 degrees out of 360. And that is equal to how much of my area? So that is pi r squared. So I'm going to go ahead and write this as 81 pi. And I am going to go ahead and simplify here. So I'm thinking what goes into both of those? Probably 5. So let's just go to our calculator real quick. So we got 175 divided by 5. 35, and 360 divided by 5 is 72, and that's good because they have no other factors in common. So now I'm going to cross multiply. That was just for the ease right there to make it smaller numbers. I'm going to multiply 35 and 81. So we're working around that pi. So 2835 pi, and then my other cross 72x. So I'm going to divide by that 72. And then I also want to just check one more time to see if there's anything I can simplify this fraction by before I leave it like that. And because we multiply 35 and 81 together, I know 9 goes into 81. 9 also goes into 72. So I know I can probably pull a 9 out of both of those. So let's try it out. So divide by 9. We've really got 315. And divide by 9, we've got 8. So we've got 315 pi over 8. So that would be your inches squared for our area.